Welcome to Dracaena Wines podcast. Our wines plus your moments equals great memories. I'm your host, Lori, and this is a podcast about all things wine. Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. Today is an episode where I was out and about in New York City. I was lucky enough to have been invited to the consortium of the Brunello di Montalcino wine event. And I got to taste so many fantastic Brunellos, and I thought it was great timing since just the previous week on Winefabet Street, Debbie and I talked about Sangiovese, and this is what Brunello is. So the consortium of the Brunello of Montalcino wine was founded in 1967 on the morn of it being branded the DOCG wine, as a free association between winemakers bent on safeguarding their wine and on accentuating its qualities. The consortium has favored the onset of the productive fabric made of old and new, small and large winemaking firms alike, brought together by the common interest of respecting nature and aspiring to the highest quality of wine. What you are about to listen to is a master class on Brunello. I enjoyed it thoroughly, and I hope you will too. Sláinte.
This morning to taste through a bunch of wonderful 2014 Brunellos. My name is Mick Jackson. A little bit about me so you know where I come from. I worked at Sotheby's for the past 6 years. I was the retail wine buyer for the retail business up there on the Upper East Side. So I come from that kind of commercial background. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the wines when they're poured, just a little bit. But we're going to start off by having a little presentation about Brunello, about Montalcino, the vineyards, the size, a little bit about the vintage 2014, and also a little bit about 2017, because later on you're going to be tasting some Rossos from 2017. And to talk about all of these things, we're very pleased to be joined here today by the director of the Consorzio of Brunello di Montalcino, Giacomo Pondi. Giacomo.
Thank you for your introduction, and I would like to go straight to our usual small presentation in order to give you the base information to start tasting our Brunello 2014. First of all, what is the Consortium? The Consortium is a free association among the producers of Brunello di Montalcino and can be part of the association growers, merchants, vineyards and bottlers. It was founded in 1967, right after the DOCG recognition for Brunello that dates back in 1966. In 1967 there were only 24 producers of Brunello di Montalcino that decided to put together their efforts in order to promote their newly born appellation. And which are the goals of the consortium? We have mainly the goal of promoting and to protect our appellation. The promotion goes through these kind of events. What we do is to organize events all over the world, and we also protect the appellation against frauds, and we also check what goes on the market actually is Brunello di Montalcino. All the producers of Brunello have to support the consortium, the association of producers, whether they are members or non-members, and that is possible because the producers of the Brunello represent the entire production of Brunello di Montalcino, and that means that also there are non-members that have to support the consortium when we're talking about promotion and protection and legal protection of the appellation. You may know already where Montalcino is, but it's always nice to talk again that we are based in the southernmost part of Tuscany, in the southernmost part of the province of Siena, and Montalcino has recently merged with the municipality of San Giovanni d'Asso. As you can see now, the shape of the area is like this square with a horn on the side, but the historical borders of Montalcino are those that we call square, made by 3 different rivers, River Ombrone, River Asso, and River Olcia. The total hectare. The total surface of this municipality is over 31,000 hectares of territory, and that has been recognized by the UNESCO World Heritage as part of the heritage of the UNESCO Center. Montalcino lays up on one of the highest spots in the area, 564 meters of altitude. And within these 31,000 hectares, only 3,500 hectares are covered in vineyards. That means that only a little over 10% of the area is covered in vineyards, and we consider that a good element of maintaining the balance among the production, the agricultural production of the area. These 3,300 hectares are divided around 2,000 hectares with Brunello di Montalcino, 500 hectares of Rosso di Montalcino, 60 hectares only of Muscadello di Montalcino, which is a sweet wine based on Moscato Bianco, and then around 500 hectares of Sant'Attimo. Not many of you may have heard about this appellation, but this is a chance of producing also red and white wines with different and international varieties. There are also other 500 hectares where you can produce IGT wines or table wines. There are over 200 wineries bottling Brunello di Montalcino at the moment. These are those who are members of the consortium. There are another 10 wineries that are not members at the moment right now. And the main climate that can be, the typical Mediterranean climate is the one that is, Mediterranean climate with also a hint of continental climate. It what characterized our area. As you can see, there are snowfalls sometimes in Montalcino, as is happening right now. We had 2 snowfalls in the recent weeks. We have warm summers, and we also benefit from the closeness of the seaside. It is only about 20 miles west from Montalcino, but at the same time we have mountains, an inner chain of mountains where Montagnata is the highest mountain of the area with nearly 1,800 meters. The average precipitation of water is around 700 millimeters per year. Actually, 2014 has been a little bit higher than 700 millimeters. And this is a 3D representation of the area of production. As you can see, there are many different colors that records all the different soils that you may find in the area of Montalcino. Montalcino lays right in the center of the area. It's not the highest spot, actually, it's Porto Civetta, it's the highest spot in the area, a little bit south from Montalcino, that reaches over 600 meters. This is the same representation in a 2D way with 4 different subzones that where we usually divide the area. Southeast, northeast, southwest, northeast are the lower parts of the area, while northwest and southeast are those that are considered the highest part, where a chain of hills is characterizing the main area. The chain of hills starts from the Montagnata, which lays right southeast of the area, and then goes northwest towards Castellano. These are the main soils that you may find in Montalcino. We start from clay, sedimentary deposits, till galestro and sandstones that you may find more in the center area, which is the highest, while clay and other sedimentary deposits can be found in the lowest part of the area. Here we have, for those who have never been to Montalcino, we have a few images of the exposition, of the different exposition. This is the northwestern exposition. Right under the map, there's the village of Montalcino, and this picture is facing northwest, with the area of Montosoli down here, while lots of vineyards are also planted right next to the village. This is still the northwestern slope. This picture was taken by Carpineto. This should be the one called Carpineto, and right next to it is Dracaena Winery. A picture from the southwestern slope, the area of Camigliano. This is the small village of Camigliano. This area is facing towards the seaside. And this is still the southwestern slope, more in the area of production of Banfi, with Castello Banfi on the left, and Sant'Angelo in Corte down in the background. This is a beautiful image of the Canalicchio area, not far from the winery Ridolfi. And this is still the Canalicchio area taken from a higher perspective. This is the winery, the Barbi winery. And this is the Montalcino down in the background. As I was telling you, a former volcano has characterized the soils of the entire area of Montalcino. This is the area of Sesta. Well, actually, this is more Castellon dell'Abate. And this is a closer image of the Monte Amiata. This picture was taken by winery Magia. As you can see, it's not easy to see it, but down on the bottom there is the Sant'Antimo Abbey. The abbey that has given the name to the appellation of Sant'Antimo, and the township of Castellon dell'Abate. A few words about the main grape that is used for producing Brunello, Sangiovese, the only variety allowed to produce Brunello di Montalcino and Rosso di Montalcino. Of course, it's the most important nowadays, the most important variety from Tuscany, and Montalcino is the only appellation in Tuscany where it's required 100% Sangiovese in production. Of course, Sangiovese grape, it's capable of giving great acidity and finesse, and at the same time age worthiness. That is what we're looking for in the wines from Montalcino. A few words about the history. Brunello has not always been the main character in Montalcino. Back in the 16th century, Moscadello was the main wine production in Montalcino. It is a wine still based on Moscato Bianco, and nowadays you can have it in more than one typology. You have the still version, the sparkling, and the late harvest. You start talking about Brunello di Montalcino only in the 19th century with Clemente Santi, the forefather of the Leone Santi dynasty, where together with a small bunch of producers, they decided to experiment a new wine based only on Sangiovese, and it was quite revolutionary at the time, because usually the red wine production was based on more than just one kind of grape at the time. But most of all, it was quite impossible to think of a wine that had to spend 5 years before being released on the market. At the time, wine was part of the daily consumption, so it was something that had to have people to work in the country, and it was quite impossible to think that people had to wait 4 or 5 days before drinking this wine. But that's it. Thank God we had these people that stick on Brunello Montalcino production, and then in 1966, the Brunello Montalcino gained the DOCG recognition from the Ministry of Agriculture. Right after that, in 1967, the consortium was born, and these 24 producers have created one of the most important Italian appellations. In 1980, the Brunello di Montalcino was the first DOCG wine, and in 1984, the Rosso di Montalcino became a DOC wine, and it was the first case of a DOC area within a DOCG production. And it was the first chance, for the first time, producers had the chance to choose which wine they wanted to produce, depending on the quality of their grapes. A few more words from a technical point of view on Brunello di Montalcino and the other appellations. Brunello di Montalcino can only be produced with Sangiovese. The maximum yield per hectare has to be 8 tons per hectare, even though the average production recently has not overcome the 6.5 tons per hectare. and that means that usually no more than 5,000 bottles per hectare of Brunello di Montalcino are produced. The code of production requires at least 2 years of aging in wood and at least 4 months in bottle for the Brunello di Montalcino annata before being released on the market. Riserva requires an extra 2 months in bottle before being released and an extra year of aging before being released on the market. For the annata, 5 years before being released on the market are required, 6 years for the Brunello di Montalcino Riserva. Rosso di Montalcino is a chance to produce a much younger, much fresher wine for the producers in Montalcino, even though you may find two different styles, something that goes closer to a Brunello, where you find more old, more structured wines when the Sangiovese had spent a few months or years in wood, or you may also find a more fruity and lively kind of wine when the producer has not used oak at all. In this case, the wine can be released on the market the 1st of September after the harvest. Still 100% Sangiovese. Muscadello, as I was mentioning before, is the historical wine of Montalcino, and it's a sweet wine, sparkling, still, or late harvest. And depending on the typology, there are different times of release on the market. Sant'Attimo, that is the name from the abbey near the township of Castello dell'Abate, is a chance for the producers to showcase that Montalcino is great not only for Sangiovese production but also for the other Italian local and international varieties, and pretty much all the different grapes allowed in Tuscany can be found here in the Sant'Attimo production. White and red are the different typologies, and we're also working on adding a sparkling version of Sant'Attimo on the color production. The average production per year, usually there are 9 million bottles on the market for Brunello di Montalcino, 4.5 million bottles for Rosso, and nearly 500,000 bottles of Sant'Attimo and around 100,000 bottles of Muscadello. There are only 13 wineries nowadays producing Muscadello di Montalcino. That, of course, has lost visibility if you compare it to the increase of the Brunello di Montalcino production. In terms of economy, the annual turnover has reached 180 million euros. And for those who are interested in organic and biodynamic production, there are around 25% of the wineries are organic or biodynamic, and that means that nearly 100% in the last 5 years has increased. The number of wineries, organic and biodynamic wineries have increased in the last 5 years. A few information about the markets. Still, the export drains the main production of Brunello di Montalcino, where around 70% is covered by the export, and the main market outside of Italy are the United States of America. Europe represents as well 25-30%, and Germany and Switzerland are playing the bigger role in this. Let's start getting a little bit more into the different characters of the harvest. Today you're gonna have this one here in this wine taste. You're gonna have the 2014, but also you'll be able to taste the 2017 with the Rosso if you're staying for the wine taste later, for the walk around tasting. And for the first time, we have given a title to the harvest just to make things easier for you to understand what we think that the harvest has been in Montalcino. 2014 has been entitled "Grapes Under Pressure" because the producers had to face a strange and really hard vintage in 2014. We had a cool and wet year, but at the same time, winter has not been so cold as it used to be. So the producers had to work a lot in the vineyard before, in order to bring the wine to the good grapes, to the good maturation, and in order to produce a great wine. It was a lot different 2017, where maybe we had the warmest vintages the last 10 years, so you're gonna have the chance to taste two completely different harvests. And a few words about also the latest harvest 2018, where we had a mixed year in terms of raining and warm summer, but together with some cases of rainfalls that also put the producers actually they did not have the chance to wait. They had to wait till October to have the good maturation of the grapes and bring in the winery the right quantity of sugar and produce a quality wine. Of course, we don't have the 2018 today, but let's wait for 2023. It's time we'll make here again, I guess, hopefully. And as you can see here, there are a few images of Montalcino for those of you who have not had the chance to visit the area. Montalcino is a town, we call it city, and as you can see, it's surrounded by vineyards. These are the main churches in Montalcino, and these are some beautiful images of the area. This is the main square, Piazza del Popolo in Montalcino. And I think we could start to talk about wine, or let the wine do the talk.
Very good. Thank you, Giacomo.
Still jet lag, I'm sorry.
I do want to talk, before we start tasting, a little bit about the character of the vintage. You're going to have 6 wines from the 2014 vintage, and then 1 wine at the end from the 2013 vintage, very different vintages. We do need to address something head on here, which is that 2014 vintage in Italy, and including in Brunello, does not have a good reputation. Let's just say that up front. Let's be very clear about this. 2014 was one of the most difficult vintages in 10, 15, 20 years in this region. If you'd had this vintage 20 years ago, it would be very difficult to make any wine at all. But we've seen such improvements in work both in the vineyard and in the cellar that almost all wineries decided to declare a Brunello in this vintage. So that's great news for us all. But look, let's not pretend that this was an easy growing season. The temperatures were consistently below average for the entire growing season. It was quite wet both at the beginning and then crucially in September. The rain finally stopped on the 24th of September, so there was a little bit of time at the end of September and the first part of October for the grapes to dry out and to continue ripening, and that maybe saved the day for a lot of producers. The producers had to work very hard in the vineyard, doing a lot of de-leafing to encourage the airflow to combat the fungal disease. And of course they lost a lot of crop, so they had to reduce the yields. And even when they reduced the yields, they had to sort very heavily on the sorting tables as well. So really, the very fact we even have any wines in front of us is good news from a very tough vintage. But the other thing, I always think about this in relation to Robert Parker. People always talk about Parker having done a lot to change styles of wines. I think one of the most underrated or underappreciated things that he did, particularly in this country, was that he made people aware about the importance of vintage. And he had a pretty dialectical view: you have a good vintage or you have a bad vintage. And I often find when I was working retail, my clients would come in and they say, oh, well, what kind of vintage? You say, oh, it's not that kind of vintage, I don't want. Unless it's a great vintage, I'm not interested. We're now moving beyond that, just because of the developments I talked about in the vineyard and in the cellar. And I think that's good news for all of us. What we're really moving now into a phase across Italy and across France and in Europe generally, is where there's just different characters to vintages. There's It's just different styles. And I think 2014, we're going to see in just a moment, I think it's a bit of a different style from the blockbuster vintages of 2011 or 2012, which are very warm years, or even the perfumes of 2013. But that's enough about that without having tasted any of the wines. So let's get on with the tasting. But I do want to ask you all one question before we start. How many of you have visited Montalcino? Good, a good number, that's fantastic. So the reason I asked that is I really want to talk about the locations of the vineyards we're tasting in, because I want to be able to taste the difference between the different areas of Brunello. We've got a range of different sites represented in this tasting, so I think it's kind of cool that all this wine is the same vintage apart from the last one, so we can compare and contrast how the different regions of Brunello fared in this vintage. So the first one we're going to talk about, wine number one, is the Ridolfi. Where's our friend from Ridolfi?
Alessandro, please come and join us for a few words about the winery and your style.
Do I have a microphone in fact, Alessandro?
We also have a small booklet where you may find the location of all the wineries you're going to taste today. So it's going to be easy to have also have a look at Ridolfi and where it is.
Okay, so can you just tell us who you are and what your job is?
Sure. We are a family-owned family in Montalcino. The owner has been working in other business before, and in 2012 he decided to buy a winery. He has a huge passion for wine and Montalcino especially, and decided to have his own winery in Montalcino. After that, he hired also Gianni, the winemaker, who has been working 18 years, more or less, for Foggi Sotto before. Then I came here in January. I was from a background in the wine business for bigger wine before, and let's say that our main strength is the owner who has passion and really loves Montalcino. He tends to allow us to do the right investments in production, in vineyards, and in mitigation, of course. And we are based in Montalcino on the northeast part of Montalcino, next to Canale Chiusura.
Is this the right record? Look at the green light. Is that one? Right. Can you see it? You're based in the right? Yeah. Or not?
That's where you are.
Yeah, that's why you're right. Yeah, sure. Correct.
So, generally speaking, you're right outside the town, but maybe just a little bit to the north and northeast, is that correct?
Correct, yeah. Towards Convento, let's say. We are on the right side.
Now, generally speaking, I think about the styles of those wines from the just north of the town as being quite a powerful, often quite an earthy style. Sometimes they can have some pretty good tannins as well. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, yes, indeed. Let's say our philosophy is to produce wine as the tradition required, yeah? And then, of course, with all the new instrumental and tools we have on our days, but we are very much looking at tradition of Montalcino.
Okay, wonderful. Let's just taste the first one, the 2014. I mean, the first thing, I don't know about you guys, but the first thing that strikes me is how savory it is on the nose. You know, we were talking about that earthiness from this northern part just a second ago. We're a mile away here from the fruity wines that you can get elsewhere in Tuscany. Very savory, very earthy. No concession to a kind of international style here. This is love or hate it. This is proper, authentic Brunello.
We're trying to avoid as much as we can to do kind of international wine since we are in Montalcino, but that's again our philosophy.
Obviously, you get a lot of freshness on the palate, but to me, the thing that's really impressive about the wine is how well managed the tannins are. In a cool, wet vintage, often you can get some pretty unripe tannins, but here I find very, very soft, very accessible.
As Vito said before, we also did a great job, hard job of the vineyard during vintage 4. We had as small Montalcino, many different problems and issues to face, but I will say that at the end, Montalcino, Brunello 14 vintage, generally speaking, has a good quotation, I will say, that's quality.
And with regard to the aging of the wine, often we think about Brunello being a 20-year wine or even more. Maybe not so much in 2014. What's the aging capacity of your wine?
Oh, averagely, we are saying Montalcino rumors, I mean, between us, we are saying between 4 and 6 years, the aging of the 14, 14 years, the time where you could easily still enjoy the wines.
Yeah, and I think in a way, you know, you can call this making a virtue of a necessity, but this is, you know, this kind of wine is fantastic for restaurants. You can drink it now with pleasure. It tastes great to me by itself, but of course we know that that's not how Italian wine is drunk. You put this with nice pasta or whatever, and you're happy days right now, and then you get further aging. Next year when it comes to 2015, we can talk about aging and capacity.
We talk different next vintage, yeah? Absolutely.
And does everyone enjoy the Ridolfi?
Very much. Thank you.
And now, a word from our sponsor. Did you know that Dracaena Wines now has a wine club? We named it the Chalk Club. Draco is on our label, but Vegas was getting a little jealous, so we decided he deserved to be our club spokesdog. In Las Vegas, betting chalk means that you are betting on all of the favorites. We are betting that we are one of your favorite wineries, so we thought the name was apropos. The club is simple, yet a bit different than most. When you wager on us, we will ship you 3 bottles of wine twice a year, once in April and once in September. You can choose all red or mix of red and rosé. You immediately receive 15% off of all your wine purchases throughout the year, but what makes our club stand out is the progressive discount. Let your club membership ride into the next year. Your discount increases. Each year you parlay your membership, you receive an additional 5% off up to a planned maximum of 25%. Your club shipments are discounted to a flat $15, plus we'll cover your club shipping cost for your second shipment. That's $15 house money in a sure bet for you. So please head to our website, dracaenawines.com, and find out all of the benefits of joining the Chalk Club and how to sign up. We've stacked the odds so that you can get our award-winning wines without breaking the bank.
The next wine we have is Capanna, which comes, tell me if I'm wrong, gentlemen, but I think it comes from relatively close to Ridolfi.
Yeah, they're not far, maybe 800 meters, not 1 kilometer far from vineyards from Ridolfi. Actually, Capanna owns the main estate is located right on the hill of Montalcino, which is a little bit north of Montalcino. But Capanna also owns vineyard close to Canalique area, so that makes it more closer to Ridolfi. I don't know if there's Daniele with us, that is the export manager, but he's not around yet, so he was a little bit busy this morning. So you're going to do the job.
I'll try and be a brand ambassador for 5 seconds. Very, very interesting just with these wineries, you know, the vineyards 800 meters apart, but you can see, even just from the colour, very different colours, right? And then on the nose, quite a different style again. Here I got a lot more pure fruit drip in comparison to the more earthy style of the Ridolfi. And that gentle herbal element, which I think is such a strong characteristic of the Brunello wines. Sometimes I think there is a kind of bay leaf note, just a hint of licorice spice. And really, a totally different style is done on the palate. You get much more rounded, rich fruit, not necessarily more concentrated, but just more, perhaps more generous in terms of the concentration of that fruit, and then a slightly sweeter, less savoury finish. So similar location, same vintage, but just totally different styles. It's personal preference, which one you like a bit more. I think this is perhaps a style which may be more familiar, maybe more accessible to many consumers. Perhaps Ridolfi is a bit more completely authentico, but you know, we have room for a diversity of styles, and that's the great thing with an appellation this big. Let's just because these two are right next to each other, it's just interesting to see which side people come down on. Who prefers the first wine, the Ridolfi? Who prefers the second wine, the Capanna? About an even split. So, interesting example. Jack, anything else to say about Capanna?
Capanna has about the style. I think that what makes the different than the wine. So all his fans doesn't see any steel at all. He spends time in wood since the beginning until the end, before being forward. So there's a strong tannin presence, as you still may feel on your tongue, that makes it a little bit different from the first wine, which is already more, where the tannins are already more rounder and still more enjoyable, and makes maybe the difference that this might be really maybe a longer time, a longer period. I don't know what's your point of view.
Yeah, I agree, and I've got some notes here that the aging of the Capanna is actually very interesting. 36 months in Slovenian oak, which is pretty standard. But the fermentation is in Slovenian cone-shaped oak vats, which is the first time I've ever read that sentence ever. For 22 to 25 days, which is a relatively short time. We'll see one, I think, a little bit later, which is even less. But generally speaking, anything less than 30 days for Brunello might be considered a short time on the skins. So that may result in a slightly fresher, more juicy style, as opposed to a very heavy tannin style. Okay, so why don't we move on to wine 3.
Beatesca. The name of the wine is Beatesca.
Can you just point us out on the map where the Beatesca is?
On the small booklet you have, it's winery number 4, but on the map here, I would say that it's right outside the village of Montalcino. The vineyard is one of those vineyards that you find on the slope of the Montalcino village, so it's right in the city of Montalcino. Yeah. And that means that the vineyards are between 400 and 450 meters, so it's quite a high location for these vineyards.
It seems like many of you have been to the town before, so you know this stuff already. But for anyone who doesn't, the reason why we keep on talking about proximity to the town is that as a hilltop town, the highest points of the vineyards are right around the town centre and going down the slopes from there. These sites, clearly in warmer vintages, they're going to ripen less quickly than the sites which are lower down, which are going to ripen quicker. And in cooler vintages may suffer from additional problems with ripening, just because you've already got limited ripening opportunity when you get that high, when you get to around 500 meters. But they do have the opposite, the flip side of that equation, is that these sites, quite close to the town centre, are not so much about power, density, concentration. They're more about elegance and finesse. You have this very slow flavour development at that altitude because of the big diurnal variation. And you can retain the acidity very, very well as well. So these are always fresh and elegant styles as opposed to blockbusters when you get close to the town. So we've seen 2 which are just north of the town. Beatesca really is right outside the town, possibly a tiny bit south, but really right there. This is a very, very small estate, 2 hectares. So this is really one of the smallest estates in Montalcino. That's about 4 acres, 4.5 acres. And we're at 400 meters here, so again, one of the higher altitude elevations. That's in feet, that's about 1,200, 1,300 feet. And so again, you can expect a kind of similar style to what we just had, but let's taste and see. There's a lovely florality to the nose here, which I haven't had in previous 2 wines. But somehow also combined with that kind of earthiness as well, so there's a lot going on in it. Very high tones, sour cherry tones. That's beautifully done wine, isn't it? All that elegance and perfume that I was talking about, you get from this high sites, I think you get here in abundance. And that real finely detailed texture to the wine, real detail on the palate, the acidity, just keeping everything bright, fresh, pure. These are the kind of wines that make me think about where we're going in Brunello, where we're going in Italian wine more generally in the last 5 to 6 vintages. What you've seen, I believe, in a movement away from the first decade of the 21st century into a new winemaking style, which is more about elegance and finesse than it is about power. And you're increasingly seeing an emphasis on terroir expression and varietal expression. And the reason I say that for this particular wine is just on the palate, you get absolutely Sangiovese glory, by which I mean those very fine grained, slightly dusty tannins, that sour red cherry note. This could not be anything other than Sangiovese, and Sangiovese from a great site. And I think, funny enough, this thing about purity and the elegance that I'm talking about in recent winemaking, 2014, as much as it's a very difficult vintage, is actually a great vintage at expressing that precision and that delicacy. I don't want to use a French term, I don't want to say Burgundian, but we're talking here again about a vintage which allows you to make a style of wine which is less about weight and density. That's the great advantage of vintage like 2014. 2015 again, which will taste this time next year, is a totally different story. We'll worry about that next year. But this, to me, is a vintage which lends itself to the way that we're beginning to make wine in Italy, which, to my taste, is a great one because I love the subtlety and the elegance.
Great representation, and yeah, described really well what we have in this class here. Just a curiosity fact, the name of the winery Beatesca comes from the merge of the name of the two daughters of the owner, Beatrice and Francesca. So we're put together as Beatesca, and of course also records something beautiful, something high.
And I think from a serving, for the sommeliers out there, from a serving perspective, we opened these wines about an hour and a half ago. We didn't decant them. And this wine was quite tight when we first opened it, but now it's really blossoming already, and that did not take long. So a quick splash decant for a wine like this in a restaurant, big glasses, happy days. That's what we need, and that's great. Again, that's the great thing about this vintage. Okay, Beatesca. So let's go on to wine 4. Okay, so while we're just finishing the pouring for that, let's just talk about the location of this next winery, which is in fact in quite a different location from the previous 3. This is a bit further away from the town. Can you show us on the map where the
This winery actually owns more than one plot, so it's this wine comes from the blending of grapes coming from different areas. Usually they have in the southeast part, but also in the northeast part of Montalcino. So depending on the season, depending on the climate, they produce more in the south than in the north, or vice versa. Depends, of course, on how the harvest is found.
Yeah, this is quite a traditional Brunello approach, quite a historic approach to have your vineyards in very different zones. So we talked already about the high altitude can be good in warm years because it ripens a bit slower, whereas in cool years like 2014 you might want to be a bit further south because it ripens a bit more easily. But this is exactly what I said, a historical approach, precisely because when your viticulture wasn't perhaps as strong as it is today, when we don't have the techniques that we know today, when we didn't have the labour force that we can employ in the vineyards, then you didn't need to have that fallback of having that ripe juice in order to blend into your grapes. But honestly, today we're doing a lot better work, as we just saw from the first 3 wines. And you consider this vintage is really on the toughest, and yet they were able to make beautiful wines like the first 3. I think we can move more to this this idea of Brunello and the very small estates in particular being very site-specific estates with individual vineyards often right around the property. Clearly, the old historic producers are not going to give up their vineyards, and neither should they, which when they're diverse all around the region. But we are moving to a place where more and more people are having single plots of vineyards and making designated styles from this site. Okay, La Togata. Let's just taste the wine. Right up off the nose, I see quite a lot of intensity down the nose, perhaps the most intense wine so far. Quite powerful aromas. we're talking about a much more powerful wine, much more density of fruit, and much more structure. The tannins here, these are the first tannins which give me pause as I feel them around the edge of the mouth. These are must be in a different climate. We moved slightly down the slope. We've got a blend of grapes from the north and from the south. I think the south is speaking quite loudly here. That's where the winery is located in the southwestern part of Sant'Angelo. And here, I think, is what's contributing to that mid-palate concentration. Because what we have seen, and this is a function both, of course, of the variety, but also especially in the vintage, is that you don't have so much mid-palate in the first three wines. Here you have a lot more fruit concentration there. But to me, also, this is the kind of wine that I tasted. I wouldn't know if I had blind tasting this is from 2014 vintage, honestly. To me, that this is a classic Brunello style, rich, concentrated, spicy, tannic, age-worthy. That herbal streak running right through the heart of the wine. It's so distinctive, so powerful. You guys have any comments about this wine? The perfume is wonderful, isn't it? Again, that's another reason why I love cool vintages, but I love perfume. And often, with these wines, the perfume takes many years to come out. That's the nature of Brunello. But again, you're getting all that stuff early. Someone once said to me that in cool vintages, the nose is often bigger than the palate. And again, that can take some time, but I think you're already beginning to experience it with a wine like this. Giacomo, anything about that?
In this case, you wouldn't think really, as you were saying, that 2014 has been so different from the other wines. So it's complementary what you were saying before about the fact that this wine has a little bit of everything. So there's not much to say in this case.
And isn't it fascinating that these four wines are already so diverse, so different? And again, this is wonderful. This is actually, from my perspective, as having worked in retail for so long, this is a very retail wine. In restaurants, you can explain stuff. In retail, you just have to get someone a good bottle of wine that they're going to be happy with, and then Friday night, and then I'm going to bring it back the next day and complain about. This is a very good, reliable wine. It's completely authentic, but there's enough fruit there that should keep all kinds happy. That's the way I think about these things. Okay. So let's go on to the fifth one, La Magia.
The winery, the owner should have been here, but yeah, he's here, right here. So I would like to invite him directly to have a few on the winery. We just made it. Thank you, Fabian. Hello. Okay. I would like to point out where your winery is, right in the right place, or you want to use it?
More or less. We are here. We are located in the central part of Montalcino, 7 kilometers outside the town, and we are one of the highest points in Montalcino. The vineyards are between 450 and 500 meters directly in front of the Abbey of Sant'Angelo. So we can consider we are on the southeast part of Montalcino. All the vineyards, so we have 15 hectares of Sangiovese, all allowed to make Brunello, and everything is in one block, and all the vineyards are looking south, so we have a very good position. It's very open, so we have sun from the early morning until late evening. But so we have very big high differences in temperature in the last maturation part of the grapes. So we have very good phenolic maturations. And the biggest part of the vineyard is still from 74, so all the Brunello are vineyards, so we have more than 40 years of vineyards.
Wonderful, thank you very much. Now, you're from the Castelnuovo dell'Abate area.
Yes, but we are one of the less vineyards which are higher in Castelnuovo.
Right, this is an important point. The Castelnuovo dell'Abate wines traditionally are a bit fuller bodied than the wines from around town, just because they're slightly lower down the slope. But here we've got an exception to the rule.
Exactly.
And so, tell us about 2014, and tell us what you had to do in order to make a good wine in 2014.
Work a lot. So 14 was a vintage which was definitely difficult for us. I mean, for everyone in Montalcino, because it was raining a lot, and we passed through the vineyards to pick the grapes 4 times. So to choose all the different qualities, and but at the end, I have to say I was very happy because after a very hard work to bring and a vintage like 14 to bring grapes where the sanity was almost perfect, I was very happy about that because I knew that we were very good. Then obviously the wine was not like a 15 or 16, and so a little bit more difficult during the fermentation. So we couldn't stay very long on the skids on all the production side, and so we did arrive over the 30 days on the skids. And after that, we decided to declass the biggest part to Rosso di Montalcino, because normally we produce about 30,000 bottles of Brunello, and this year we will produce between about 8,000 bottles. So there was a lot of work, and I was happy about the work, but then to make the wine we had to make hard decisions, but at the end we did, in my opinion, a very good product for the vintage.
And we often hear this idea that the great wine is made in the vineyard. Everyone says it. But in 2014 is the vintage where you actually get the opportunity really to experience that. Because if you don't do any work in the vineyard, you don't get any wine in the vintage like 2014. So can you explain a little bit about the exact things that you have to do in the vineyard in order to maintain the purity of the fruit?
So, first of all, in 14 where it was raining a lot, we have to spray more. So we are organic, and that means that we cannot use chemical products which are going inside the plant to defeat all the fungus problem. And so we can only work with copper, which is only cover the plant and the grape from the fungus. So that means that every time when it's raining, we have to spray again. Or not every time, but when it's raining more than 20 millimeters of water, yes. So we had to spray a lot. So that means that you have to check every day, if you have to every day or every week, you have to spray or not. You have to put away more leaves, especially on the level of the grapes, so that you have more aeration and more sun. And that were the biggest part on that work. But you are not making so different things from a normal vintage, but you have to have more attention. So you have to be prepared in every moment to do the right thing. But then you are not making something which is totally different. And then you have to cut the grass, obviously, because it's every week.
Yeah, I mean, just to give you an insight as to the way the winery owners think about these kind of things, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but you get a very wet vintage and it's a nightmare on all fronts. You have to spend more time in the vineyard, which means more man hours, more labor, it's more expensive. You have to spray more, which means you've got to buy in this case, the copper. So that's more expensive. You're going to lose a bunch of yield, so you're producing less. And then often, although not always, you're going to have to reduce your prices for the finished product. So, it's really a tough situation all around. And that, in a way, makes me all the more sort of happy when I get to taste the end product. It's still really good.
One thing, we don't want to decrease the price.
Best price though.
Someone's asking me. All the rest is true.
Since we're on the subject of vintage right now, we know that the 13 is a very elegant, very perfumed vintage. We're seeing what 14 is right now. The 15 and 16 are going to be historical vintages in Brunello for different reasons. Can you give us a little preview about what 15 and 16 will be like?
15 and 16 were two very good vintages, and I think that 15 was a very, very easy vintage in terms of that the average product, every vineyard of Montalcino had good grapes. It was very warm 15, so in some parts probably you had a little bit overripe grapes, so we will have wines which will be very fruity, and but it was as a winemaker or especially as who is working in the vineyard, it was very easy. Completely opposite of 14 in this sense. Less work in the vineyard. But and 16 was not so warm like 15. So in my opinion, there is the average quality in Montalcino maybe was not that high, that 15, but we had the really top vineyards were better than 50, have more expression in this sense.
Yeah, I'm sure any of you who've been selling 15s either in the on-trade or the off-trade with your Tenuta, the Super Tuscans and all that know how well the 50 Super Tuscans were received. It's going to be the same when it comes to the Barolo's and the Brunellos next year. And it's just happy days all round. It's a very ripe, rich vintage. Although my guess is, and you tell me what you think, but my guess is that there's an additional layer of refinement to the 16s, whereas the 15s are quite fruity and generous. The 16s might ultimately be more complex vintage. But maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves. We need to taste and see for ourselves.
Yeah, we will see starting from next year.
Wonderful. Well, we haven't even talked about what the wine actually tastes like yet, so we should probably do that. But to me, what is so impressive about the wine in the context of this vintage is that it has such a good concentration and there's so much generosity of fruit.
The 14.
Yeah.
14 was. We tried. I mean, like I told you, we produced only less than 20% of the normal production, so we took only the best parts and tried to make a wine which have not the same concentration like the 13 or the 12, but which is nearby. So, and but what we do, everything in our wines, we look every time for an elegance, a good fruit, a good balance. So, in my opinion, a good wine. It's every time it's the wine which is finished. So wine have to be, in one sense, drinkable. For the Brunello, you have an exception in terms of the. First of all, it has to be a wine which is due minimum 10 years. Sometimes you cannot give this drinkable to all the wines, but you have to do something like that. That is the goal today in the market.
What do you think the ageability of the wine is? How long is this one going to last?
So, fortunately, that's a big question because, in my opinion, it will be a big surprise on some wines, because probably everyone will say, yeah, 10 years will be okay, but then I don't know. But then maybe if you forget some bottles in the freezer. I had the same experience with the 94. 94 was a vintage which was definitely not good, and but I have some bottles left at home, and because it's my sister was painting the label at that time, and so we still have some bottles of the 94. And it's great wine. It don't have the it's not so powerful like other vintages, like the 97, but it's great to drink after 30 years. So.
Wonderful. Well, I think you've done a great job in this vintage, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move on from the 2014 vintage. We've heard a lot about that vintage. Before we go on to the 213s, which we have left to us here, is it just me, or are these wines better than the sort of reputation of the vintage? They're diverse in style. They, like we said, they are 20, 25-year wines in all likelihood, but we don't always need vintages which are going to be like that. But they're interesting, they're fresh, they're pure, very enjoyable, I think. Okay, 2013, so we've got two 2013s. So the first one is the Corte Pavone.
Yep.
Where's our
Corte Pavone is quite central in the area, not so far from Montalcino, but on the road to Castello del Bosco. So it's right on the south, on the northwest side of the area, west from Montalcino, not far. It's here.
Is this the part called Tavernello?
Well, actually, Tavernello is a little bit more south. It's down here, Tavernello, as you can see. You take the road from Montalcino towards Tavernello, but then you make a turn right, and you maintain yourself on the coast. I don't know how to say it, but on the cusp of the hill here, going towards Castello del Bosco. And we also have a picture of their vineyards. And this is Capanna, which is right next to. So this is Capanna, but there's also a picture of their vineyards, which is facing the Castello Vittorio winery. And this is the view of Castello Vittorio from the winery of Loaca. Winery. These are part of the estate Loaca.
So this is looking west in this view, out towards the city.
Not here. There's Siena here, right behind these hills, here, down here, and Castello del Bosco is down behind these hills.
No, this picture is actually quite interesting because it shows the way that the vineyards are really right around the town of Brunelllo, just down the slopes, and as soon as you get away from the immediate slopes, the whole area just runs out. And when you're driving around there in the summer, especially towards the end of the summer, when it's baked, and everything's brown, and really there's nothing, it's sort of a wasteland once you get outside those slopes between there and Siena and the whole. Okay, so 2013, so I mentioned 2013 in passing, a vintage which you probably know from last year's release. I'm sure you enjoy serving those wines because, to me, this vintage is a perfect encapsulation of what I'm calling this new style of winemaking across Italy, where it's about elegance and finesse. I also love the 13th because I think, and I believe this is also true in Piemonte, in 13 is the wines particularly perfumed, which I love. It's particularly the style of wine that I love. So let's just take a look at this one. See what I mean? It's amazing how consistently these vintage attributes hold across different wines. One thing that just before you have the glass, if you have a big burgundy bowl here, it would not go amiss. It's very harmonious wine. Everything's in balance. The acidity and the tannin and the fruit is completely integrated. And it's a real spice edge to this one. Completely authentic. And again, this is, what I was talking about with the other ones before about the purity of the expression of Sangiovese. Here again. Sangiovese seems to be a variety which still doesn't have the recognition for the quality that it represents. People always are happy to say Nebbiolo is a great variety. Somehow Sangiovese is sort of like, it's pretty good, I suppose it's second best in Italy after Nebbiolo, but it's not really at the same level as Cabernet or the other great international varieties. This is crazy. It's crazy to me. Sangiovese is one of the great things in the wine world. And maybe, it's limited, of course, by not being an international variety, no one grows Sangiovese anywhere else. But in this particular place, it's spectacular. Any thoughts you want to express aloud about this Corte Pavone? Yes, sir.
I've seen the last two, both of them each on 500 year launch bottle. So I think that this one give a little more of that. Any problems of the thing and the aromatic, like they are more, for me they are like more equally spicy and a little bit of a
So you're talking about, you think you're getting some flavors from the oak as well as... Yeah, I can see that. I think the other thing we've got here is, the additional year of age. Even that small amount of extra bottle age will make a difference. These wines were bottled, the 14s were bottled when? About a year ago? Or slightly longer? About 15 months ago?
Yeah, around that time.
Yeah. But for these very young wines, especially from vintage like 13 and 14 again, which are not blockbuster vintages either of them, even that 1 year can make a difference. So I think that in the 13 you've already got a personal vintage, and that extra development will even bring out that perfume a little bit more. But with regards to your question, Corte Pavone is 30 days in cone-shaped vats and in stainless steel, 30 to 40% in 500 litre tonneau for 1 year, otherwise it's all large oak. So relatively true.
It was bottled at the end of 2017,
At the end of
just over a year in the bottle.
I haven't tasted the last wine yet, so let's do that now. We've moved here from the west, from just west of the town where Corte Pavone is, to Barbi, which, as you know, the winery itself is right just south of the town. But, Giacomo, can you just say a few words, or maybe we have...
Yeah, I would like to invite Raffaella, who's the expert manager. Please, Raffaella, join us.
I can see some familiar face. I've been here so many years. And thank you very much for coming. And I can see a good smile on your face, which is even better. And thank you very much, Nick, for the way you conducted the tasting so far. It's very, very interesting and very informative about Montalcino, about Brunello, and not just about the single producers. So, my name is Raffaella, and I've been representing Fattoria de Barbi since 21 years ago, and I've been living in Montalcino much longer. And so it's always a pleasure to be here and see how much interest you are showing vintage after vintage about the production that is concerning a very small area in the wine world, but very representative. Fattoria de Barbi, as you might know, it's an estate that has been in the same family for centuries. The family is Colombini, and they contributed together with their cousins Santi to create what is basically the modern Brunello that you are tasting nowadays. And today it's a very special occasion. I'm almost sorry that we haven't presented the 14, but we thought being at the end of the first shift of the masterclass, it would be nice to have a sort of cherry on top of the cake and presenting our Brunello Riserva 2013. The 14 is in the next room together with the other producer if you will want to go and taste afterwards. So the property, as I said, has been in the same family for many generations. That helped to get together many vineyards, which are mostly located around the winery, around the cellar, around the villa, in the southeastern part of Montalcino, which is considered one of the classic and oldest and traditional area. It's just after the Beatesca, in case you wonder. And I think it's probably one of the oldest because also it was one of the closest to the major roads in centuries ago, and even until maybe 50 years ago, there were practical reasons to make wine in certain areas instead of others. That doesn't mean that our area is a minor or least, it's just one of the first that started to plant vineyards, select clones, and go on into producing a wine that still today represents what is, for me, a reference point of what a good red or great red wine from central Italy, from Tuscany, from Sangiovese is like. So I think this is a 13. Can I go on? This 13 Riserva, it's a very good sort of example how a very classic wine that has been made for many, many years is still incredibly contemporary. This is a wine that it's made selecting the best grapes coming from our oldest vineyards in the property, all located in the southeastern part, but with different elevation. We go from 250 meters to 450 meters on the sea level. The vineyards that are generally producing grapes for the Riserva are at least 25 years old. The production is mostly much less than the 8 tons allowed per hectare. So we're talking about almost half of it. That means that when it's the moment of a harvest, there is a first round of analysis and check, and we already know what is potentially going to be the Riserva, and not just the regular Brunello. Riserva, as Giacomo said in the introduction, is the creme de la creme of Brunello, or should be, that is released 1 year after the regular Brunello. It doesn't forcefully have the obligation of staying longer than 2 years in oak, but generally speaking it is. So in our case, the Brunello Riserva is kept for an average of 3 years in tonneau of 700 liters, and when we have enough, the last year is done in larger barrels that can reach 1,000 liters. That depends on the amount of wine that we want to declare as a Brunello Riserva and not just a regular one.
Wonderful, thank you very much. And I talked a little bit earlier on about how a lot of estates have different vineyard sites, so you can blend according to the vintage. Can we just set that slide on the map again, Giacomo? Yeah. You said that all of your vineyards are still in the south east part of the region, sort of south of the town towards Capanna.
Yeah, it's midway between. Okay, so this is the town of Montalcino. You drive down towards Castelnuovo dell'Abate. It's about 4 kilometers south of Montalcino in this area that are located. And because the family existed since even before my birth, that means that they had the time to plant many vineyards. We have about 35 vineyards classified, 35 hectares of vineyards classified Brunello di Montalcino, and not forcefully all of them are for the Riserva. It depends on the vintages.
Yes, there's no standard recipe, it's just vintage by vintage. I think this point here that we're talking about the different elevations and the aspects of these sites which are very close to each other, this is what constitutes terroir difference in Montalcino. You talk about other great wine producing areas of the world, talk about the Medoc, for instance, in Bordeaux, it's completely flat and all the soils are gravel, and that's it. Here we're talking about what makes the difference is elevation aspect.
Yes, elevation, and then of course the mixture of the soil composition. In our case, it's on the surface is a mix of clay and especially galestro, stony, that sort of, and underneath there is a good presence of what I call fossil sands, because many millions of years ago around Montalcino it was water, there was a sea, and then when the sea left fossils that slowly crumbled down, pulverized in what is now sand. And actually the name Fattoria dei Barbi has different hypotheses of origins, because the family is Colombini, and now it's Cucinelli Colombini, but the area is called Barbi. And one of the reasons why it's called Barbi has been found in the name Barbo, which defines locally the catfish, you know, that fish with mussels, of which a lot of fossils have been found in the area. So one of the hypotheses of the name of the area called Barbi is because there were a lot of fossils found in the area. And one more thing I just want to add, because we are getting late and I have to go to my position on the other room, is that generally speaking, and if you are here, you know Montalcino and Brunello and Rosso di Montalcino are wines with a very specific identity. And Nick was very particular in saying that in the recent years we have been seeing a switch into the style, which for me, because I've been in the area for 35 years, is just going back to the original identity of Montalcino wines, which is based on the elegance in the finesse, in the length more than in the width, in the wings and the acidity that bring the wine higher, and not in the heaviness that was unfortunately popular in the 90s and the early 20s. And even if the climatic conditions have changed, if you think that the average Brunello alcohol level in the 70s and even in the 80s was 12.5, and now it's almost impossible to make a Brunello that is less than 14 in alcohol. But you still find, and I really enjoyed this first swift of different 14 vintages, because they have different interpretation maybe, but the major substance of them is the same, and it's elegance, it's finesse, it's lightness, it's vibrancy, and it's everything you want for a wine to make you smile, and to make you smile and identify that your smile comes from a very specific area. Thank you very much.
Well, Raphael was just talking about the 2014 vintage, but I think we can all agree that 2013 Riserva makes us smile, so thank you very much, Raphael. Giacomo has got one final point to make, and
Raphael reminded me about the fact that we also have an app where, for those of you who are interested to know more about the location of all the vineyards, you can download it and see where actually the vineyards are, and that helps you really a lot to understand where the wine is coming from and all the different character of the different wines. So it's, if you're interested, the app is called Brunelllo. It's as simple as that.
Thank you very much, Giacomo. Thank you everyone for being here. I hope you've learned and enjoyed something about 14 today. And the tasting continues next week.